had been going so well for the Beck family.
Hi!
The younger of two kids, Parker Beck, was a happy, healthy 2-year-old. But not long after his second birthday, those smiles inexplicably began to fade.
Parker! I called him.
How come he didn't look?
He wouldn't look at us. He would shift his gaze. He was irritable. He would throw his head back and scream, high-pitched screams.
It seemed Parker no longer heard his parents' voices.
Parker! Call him.
He stopped talking, stopped sleeping through the night, and began oddly spinning.
Say mommy.
Although their pediatrician assured them Parker would get over it, the Becks sensed it was something more.
Parky, can you say mama? Say mama.
Do you remember that night and looking at each other and it really fully, for the first time, dawning on you, something's wrong?
Mm-hmm.
You remember that moment?
We were both in Utah, and we actually were both on our knees in front of a window, and we just hugged each other and said, no matter what, we'll find an answer.
You made yourselves a promise.
Yeah.
That promise would lead them on a journey that would involve dozens of doctors and months of frustration as Parker got worse. Parker was showing all the symptoms of autism, one of the most terrifying and hopeless diagnoses a parent can hear. Victoria remembers her doctor offered little comfort.
He put his pen down and looked at me and he said, Mrs. Beck, he said, let me tell you something. Miracles don't happen in these situations. If you're looking for something like a Lorenzo's oil, it doesn't exist. So why don't you stop wasting your time trying to find one?
At least 550,000 American children like these suffer from autism, and the numbers are on the rise. Imagine your child disconnecting from the world, a child whose eyes look but don't see, whose ears hear but don't listen, whose cries never end, and doctors offer little help.
We don't know what's wrong with this child. We'll call them autistic, and we'll just kind of put them all in a box. We don't know what causes it. We have no idea how to fix it.
It wasn't just Parker's behavior plaguing his parents. It was Parker's health. For 2 years, he suffered constant diarrhea and vomiting. And then in 1996, almost 2 years after his parents say Parker got sick, they brought him here to the University of Maryland Medical System, where he underwent a test called an endoscopy to try to find out what was the matter with his digestive system. Ultimately, the test told them nothing. It was just another frustrating dead end. Or was it? A few days later, something completely unexpected happened. Parker's diarrhea disappeared, and he began sleeping through the night for the first time in 2 years.
And 10 days after the procedure, Parker's therapist called me downstairs and said, I think you better come and take a look at this.
Great. Oh, you're so smart.
And Parker, who had been totally nonverbal, was now reciting flashcards as quickly as she could hold them up.
Yeah.
This is a boy who hadn't talked for 2 years.
That's right. And she was holding up a picture of me, and he was saying, Mommy. And then she held up Gary's picture, and he said, Daddy.
You must have been thrilled.
We were stunned.
And you hadn't heard him saying Daddy for a long time.
Never. I mean, he mumbled it before he lost his language, but this was as clear as could be.
Where's Daddy?
Where's Daddy?
There he is.
For Victoria and Gary, it was nothing short of a miracle. Their little boy was back, talking, listening. But they worried, how long would it last? What had brought about this sudden, wonderful change? Could it have been that test at the hospital? Together, Victoria and Gary pored over every detail of the test. Finally, they learned Parker had been given a small amount of a hormone called secretin. Used in diagnosing problems with the pancreas, secretin is extracted from pigs, but very similar to a naturally occurring hormone in humans. Maybe secretin was responsible, she told the doctors.
They were just really kind of fascinated, but I think kind of disbelieving at the same time.
Was it sort of, that's a wonderful story, little
Patronizing.
lady, but
That's right.
that's not what's going on.
We're very happy for you, Mrs. Beck. Now just get out of our face for
Leave
a
us
while.
alone.
And what was worse, after giving Parker one more dose of secretin, according to his mother, the University of Maryland cut him off. She feared Parker would lose everything he had gained.
I mean, it might be what's saving his life,
That's right.
and they won't give it to you.
No.
And what was the reason?
Well, we were told at the time that it wasn't FDA approved.
Tuesday.
The University of Maryland declined Dateline's request to discuss Parker Beck's treatment.
One more.
But what we do know is that the hospital followed the rules laid down for them by the FDA, rules generally written to prevent doctors from experimenting with risky or untried treatment. The FDA had not approved secretin as a treatment for anything, including autism, only for helping diagnose digestive problems, precisely the way it had been used on Parker. Using secretin for any other reasons falls under what's called off-label use, a medical gray area that in this case many doctors seem reluctant to enter.
How hard was it to get a doctor to say, okay, I believe you, let's prescribe some secretin and see what happens?
Well over a year after the endoscopy.
A year?
A year.
And you talked to more than one or two doctors?
Dozens of doctors said no.
And this is you saying, I think this has saved my child's life. He's back. And they're saying, we don't feel authorized to give it to you?
That's right.
Parker did not get any more secretin for months. His parents say that while he did not regress, he stopped improving. It took months of telephone calls and scanning the internet, but finally, Victoria and Gary were able to find one doctor willing to give Parker more secretin. And sure enough, Parker seemed to improve. And it was during that time that other parents with autistic children heard about Parker's dramatic recovery.
He was staring right in my face, looking at my eyes, looking like, Mom, I haven't seen you in a year.
Last month, we talked to a group of parents with autistic children, parents who had almost given up hope until they heard of Victoria's discovery and managed to get secretin for their children.
After that, secretin, no more diarrhea, he's potty trained, looking at me eyes, talking, he's talking, he's talking. 5 and 6 words, and he's saying, look how pretty outside.
I was able to hold him, talk to him, tickle him. He waved for the first time since he was a year old. This was the night, the night of the first secretin infusion.
Last month, Susan Connors invited Dateline to watch as her 7-year-old autistic son, Patrick, received his first infusion of secretin.
Okay, now we're almost through putting the secretin in.
It was administered by one New York State doctor willing to venture into off-label use of the hormone. While Patrick initially showed signs of improvement, it faded quickly. Even a second infusion did not seem to help.
Good boy.
I think that there's no assurance that any given child will respond.
Dr. Bernard Rimlin, an internationally recognized expert on autism, says about 200 children have now received secretin, and half have shown positive results.
So it'd be very premature for a parent to assume that their kid is going to be one of those who will experience this as a breakthrough. On the other hand, I would urge every parent to look into the possibility that their child may be one of those who will benefit.
So here lies perhaps the biggest dilemma of all. It appears we may now have a treatment which possibly could help thousands of children, but no conclusive studies have been done yet, so parents and doctors are operating in the dark. If it works, how much of this stuff should a child receive, and how often should they get it? And even more importantly, who should get it? Even for parents who are lucky enough to find some doctor somewhere willing to go off-label and prescribe secretin, the supply is extremely limited.
So when you talk to these parents, parents who have found doctors willing to supply secretin, they will not risk that supply by revealing the name of the doctors.
They helped my son, I'm not going to hurt them.
I don't want our supply or Parker's supply of it to be cut off.
And because it's limited, they're forced to experiment about how much secretin to give their children and how often.
My sister have a cow.
Yes, I do.
Rabbit?
Today, Parker continues to thrive, his secretin supply secure, for now.
Go fish.
Could Victoria Beck go down in medical history as someone who opened a whole new door?
I think she could, and I wouldn't be surprised to find that she has.
And forgive us our debts.
Though clinical trials are still underway, Victoria is convinced that secretin is responsible for helping Parker escape from the box of autism.
Amen.
That an overlooked natural hormone is the answer to their prayers.
Good night, Parker.
Good morning.
Definitive proof that secretin therapy works will only come after more research. Preliminary tests are underway, but it could be a long while before secretin is approved by the FDA to treat this disorder. If you'd like to learn more about using secretin to treat autism, you can get the latest information from our website, www.dateline.msnbc.com.
Dry lips? Kiss them goodbye. Revlon Moisture Stay Lip Color with vitamin C. Moisture that stays.
Even after I take the color off.
Revlon Moisture Stay.